Part 1. The Lighthouse Keeper's Daughter. The ocean sang its ancient lullaby as twilight painted the sky in shades of lavender and gold. Marina stood at the top of the lighthouse, her long auburn hair dancing in the evening breeze as she lit the great beacon that would guide ships safely through the night. She had performed this ritual countless times since her 17th birthday, when her grandfather Henrik had deemed her ready to share the sacred duty of lighthouse keeping. But tonight felt different. The waves below seemed to carry melodies she had never heard before, harmonies that made her heart flutter with mysterious longing. Marina paused in her work, pressing her ear toward the ocean, trying to catch the elusive songs that drifted up from the depths. The music was real, she was certain of it. Though she had never mentioned these magical sounds to anyone, not even to her beloved grandfather. The lighthouse where Marina lived with old Henrik sat perched on a rocky cliff overlooking the vast expanse of the northern sea. It had been in their family for generations, passed down from keeper to keeper, each one sworn to maintain the light that protected sailors from the treacherous rocks below. The structure itself was a marvel of white stone and weathered wood, with winding stairs that spiraled up through 5 levels to the lamp room at the top. Marina's chambers occupied the 3rd level, where large windows offered breathtaking views of the ocean in every direction. She had arranged her few possessions with care, placing her mother's music box on a small wooden table near the eastern window, where the morning sun would make its crystal dancer sparkle. Books filled a handmade shelf, most of them stories of adventure and romance that she had traded for with traveling merchants who sometimes sought shelter at their lighthouse. As storm clouds gathered on the horizon, Marina felt the familiar thrill of anticipation that always came before rough weather. She loved the way the lighthouse felt alive during storms, how it swayed gently with the wind while remaining steadfast against the elements. The beacon's light would cut through rain and mist like a sword of hope, calling lost souls home to safety. Henrik climbed the stairs slowly, his weathered hands gripping the rope banister as he joined his granddaughter in the lamp room. At 73, he still possessed the strength and wisdom that had made him a legendary lighthouse keeper, though Marina noticed how he moved more carefully these days, how his blue eyes sometimes seemed to look beyond the horizon as if seeing things from another time. "Storm's coming fast tonight, Little Pearl," he said, using the pet name he had given her as a child. "Can you feel it in the air?" Marina nodded, but she was listening to something else entirely. The ocean's music had grown stronger, more complex, as if the approaching storm was conducting a symphony of waves and wind. She could hear bass notes in the deep swells, delicate treble melodies in the foam that kissed the rocks, and something else, something that sounded almost like voices singing in harmony with the natural rhythm of the sea. "Grandfather," she said carefully, "do you ever hear music when you listen to the ocean?" Henrik's eyes sharpened with interest, and for a moment Marina thought she saw a flicker of recognition cross his weathered face. But then he smiled gently and patted her shoulder. "The sea has many voices, child. Those who spend their lives beside her learn to understand her moods and messages. Your grandmother used to say she could hear the ocean's dreams." Before Marina could ask more about her mysterious grandmother, a brilliant flash of lightning illuminated the darkening sky. Thunder followed seconds later, rolling across the water like the footsteps of giants. The storm had arrived with sudden fury, bringing with it walls of rain that lashed against the lighthouse windows and waves that crashed against the cliff with tremendous force. Marina took her position at the great lamp, adjusting the mirrors and lenses to ensure the beacon would shine as brightly as possible through the storm. This was the most important part of her duty, the moment when her lighthouse became a lifeline for any ship caught in the tempest. The light had to be perfect, unwavering, a star fixed in the chaos of the storm. As she worked, the ocean's music grew louder and more intense, weaving through the sounds of wind and rain with ethereal beauty. Marina found herself moving in rhythm with the melodies, her hands dancing across the lamp controls as if she were playing some magnificent instrument. She had never felt so connected to her work, so aware of the lighthouse's true purpose. Through the storm's fury, she glimpsed something impossible, a ship fighting its way through the massive waves toward their beacon. The vessel was like nothing she had ever seen before, with sails that seemed to catch wind even in the wildest gusts, and a hull that cut through the water with supernatural grace. At its bow stood a figure in a dark coat, his face turned upward toward their light with an expression of desperate hope. Marina's heart began to race as she realized the ship was heading directly for the dangerous rocks that surrounded their island. She grabbed the emergency signal horn and began to sound the warning pattern that would alert the ship to the hidden dangers below the surface. But even as she did, she felt strangely certain that this mysterious captain already knew exactly where he was sailing. The ship navigated the rocky maze with impossible precision, finding the narrow channel that led to the small harbor below the lighthouse. Marina watched in amazement as the vessel glided into the protected cove as if guided by invisible hands. Whoever was sailing that ship possessed either incredible skill or magical assistance. Henrik appeared beside her, squinting through the rain at the ship below. "Well, I'll be damned," he muttered. "Haven't seen seamanship like that in 40 years. Better go down and see if they need assistance." But Marina was already moving, her feet carrying her down the spiral stairs with unusual urgency. Something about the ship and its mysterious captain called to her in the same way the ocean's music did. She felt as if she had been waiting her entire life for this stormy night, for this moment when the sea would deliver something magical to her doorstep. She threw on her heavy wool cloak and stepped out into the storm, making her way carefully down the treacherous path that led from the lighthouse to the harbor. Rain soaked through her clothes within moments, but she barely noticed the cold. Her attention was focused entirely on the ship and the tall figure she could see moving about its deck with fluid efficiency. As Marina reached the harbor, the stranger was already securing his vessel to the ancient stone pier. In the flickering light of her lantern, she caught her first clear glimpse of his face, and her breath caught in her throat. He was younger than she had expected, perhaps in his late 20s, with dark hair that curled damply around his collar and eyes the color of stormy seas. There was something timeless about his features, as if he might have stepped out of one of the romantic tales she loved to read. "Thank you for the light," he called out over the wind, his voice carrying a slight accent she couldn't place. "Your beacon saved my ship and possibly my life." Marina felt heat rise in her cheeks despite the cold rain. "It's what we do here," she replied, raising her voice to be heard above the storm. "Are you hurt? Do you need shelter?" The stranger finished tying off his lines and stepped onto the pier, moving with the easy balance of someone who had spent years at sea. Up close, Marina could see that his coat was made of deep blue wool with intricate silver buttons, and his boots were crafted from leather so fine it seemed to gleam even in the storm. "I am Captain Elias Stormwind," he said with a slight bow that seemed both formal and playful. "And I would be most grateful for shelter until this tempest passes." Marina's heart skipped at the sound of his name and the way he looked directly into her eyes when he spoke. She had met sailors before, men who stopped at their lighthouse seeking supplies or directions, but none of them had affected her like this. There was something about Elias that made her feel as if the world had suddenly become more vivid, more alive with possibility. "I am Marina," she said, then gestured toward the lighthouse. "Follow me. My grandfather will want to meet you, and we have warm food and dry clothes." As they climbed the winding path together, Marina became acutely aware of Elias walking beside her. Even through the storm, she could sense his presence like warmth from a fire. When the wind threatened to knock her off balance, his steady hand appeared at her elbow, guiding her safely along the treacherous route. The lighthouse welcomed them with golden light and blessed warmth. Henrik met them at the door with hot tea and thick blankets, his experienced eyes taking in every detail of their unexpected guest. Marina noticed how her grandfather studied Elias with particular interest, as if recognizing something familiar in the young captain's bearing. "Rare to see a ship navigate those rocks so skillfully in weather like this," Henrik commented as they settled around the small table in their main living area. "Where did you learn to sail?" Elias smiled mysteriously as he accepted a steaming cup of tea. "I've been sailing these waters longer than you might expect, sir. The sea and I have an understanding." Marina found herself captivated by the way Elias spoke, by the way his eyes seemed to hold depths of knowledge and experience. She wanted to ask him 1,000 questions about his travels, about the exotic places he must have visited, about what had brought him to their lighthouse on this particular stormy night. But as she listened to him exchange pleasant conversation with her grandfather, Marina became aware of something else entirely. The ocean's music had grown softer since Elias arrived, but it hadn't disappeared. Instead, it seemed to be harmonizing with something new, a melody that she somehow associated with their mysterious guest. It was as if his presence had added a new instrument to the sea's eternal symphony. Outside, the storm continued to rage, but inside the lighthouse, Marina felt as if she had discovered something precious and rare. She caught Elias watching her with curious intensity, and when their eyes met, she felt a spark of connection that made her pulse quicken with anticipation for whatever tomorrow might bring. Songs of the Deep. The storm had passed by morning, leaving behind a world washed clean and sparkling with diamonds of dew. Marina woke before dawn, drawn from dreams filled with mysterious melodies and stormy gray eyes. She dressed quietly and climbed to the lamp room, where she found Elias already standing at the eastern window, watching the sunrise paint the ocean in shades of gold and rose. "You're an early riser," she said softly. Not wanting to break the peaceful spell of the morning, Elias turned toward her, and Marina's breath caught at the sight of him in the gentle morning light. His dark hair caught hints of auburn, and his eyes held depths that seemed to reflect the changing colors of the sea. "I've always found dawn to be the most honest time of day," he said, "the moment when the world reveals its true nature." Marina joined him at the window, acutely aware of the warmth that seemed to radiate from his presence. Below them, the ocean stretched endlessly, its surface calm now except for gentle swells that caught the early light like scattered coins. But as she listened, Marina could still hear the music, softer now but more complex than ever before. "Do you hear that?" she asked impulsively, then immediately regretted the question. No one else had ever heard the ocean's songs, but Elias tilted his head thoughtfully, his expression growing serious. "The harmony of the deep currents? The melody that runs beneath the surface waves?" He looked at her with sudden intensity. "You can hear it too." Marina's heart began to race. For the first time in her life, she wasn't alone with her mysterious gift. "You mean it's real? The music isn't just in my imagination?" "Oh, it's very real," Elias said, moving closer until she could see flecks of green in his gray eyes. "But very few people have the ability to perceive it. Your grandfather mentioned that your grandmother could hear the ocean's dreams. I suspect she could hear the music, too." "How do you know so much about it?" Marina asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Elias was quiet for a long moment, his gaze returning to the ocean. When he spoke, his words carried a weight of ancient knowledge. "Because I've been bound to these waters for longer than any mortal man should be. Because I've spent years learning the secrets that the sea keeps hidden from most of humanity." Before Marina could ask what he meant, Henrik's voice called up from below. "Marina, come down, child. There's someone here who wants to meet our guest." They descended the spiral stairs to find Henrik standing with a young woman Marina recognized as Coral, her childhood friend from the village. Coral had grown into a beauty with honey-colored hair and bright blue eyes, and she worked as a seamstress in town. But there was something different about her today, something that made Marina uneasy. "Coral," Marina said with genuine pleasure, embracing her friend. "What brings you out so early?" "Word travels fast in the village when a mysterious ship appears overnight," Coral replied, but her attention was already fixed on Elias with obvious admiration. "I had to come see this famous sailor who can navigate our treacherous waters in a storm." Marina felt an unexpected stab of jealousy as she watched Coral flutter her eyelashes at Elias. Her friend had always been charming with men, but Marina had never cared before. Now, seeing Coral's obvious interest in the captain, Marina felt protective and possessive in a way that surprised her. Elias was polite but distant as Henrik made introductions. Marina noticed how his attention kept drifting back to her, how his eyes sought hers even while conversing with Coral. The observation filled her with warm satisfaction. Perhaps you'd like to see more of our island while you're here, Coral suggested to Elias. I could show you the village, introduce you to the other young people. That's very kind, Elias replied diplomatically, but I'm hoping Marina might show me the coastline from the lighthouse perspective. I'm interested in the unique acoustic properties of this location. Coral's smile faltered slightly, but she recovered quickly. Of course, Marina knows every inch of these cliffs. She turned to her friend with a forced brightness. I'll leave you to your tour then, but promise you'll bring the captain to the harvest dance next week? After Coral left, Marina found herself alone with Elias, while Henrik attended to lighthouse maintenance. They walked together along the cliff paths, the morning sun warming their faces as seabirds wheeled overhead. Marina had traveled these routes countless times, but seeing them through Elias's eyes made everything feel new and magical. Tell me about the music, she said as they paused at her favorite overlook. How long have you been able to hear it? Elias leaned against the stone wall that edged the cliff, his expression growing distant with memory. Since I was a boy. My grandmother was from an old seafaring family, and she taught me to listen for the ocean's voice. But it wasn't until I began sailing that I truly understood what I was hearing. And what exactly are we hearing? Marina asked, settling beside him on the sun-warmed stone. The heartbeat of the world, Elias said simply. Every ocean on Earth is connected, Marina. The music you hear is the sound of that connection, the harmony that binds all waters together. But there are places where the music is stronger, where the barrier between our world and the realm of the sea is thinner. Marina felt a shiver of excitement mixed with apprehension. You think our lighthouse is one of those places? I know it is. Elias turned to face her fully, his expression intense. Your lighthouse doesn't just guide ships, Marina. It serves as an anchor point between worlds. That's why your family has guarded it for generations. That's why you can hear the music so clearly. Before Marina could respond, a voice drifted up from the water below, so beautiful and haunting that it made her heart ache with longing. She and Elias moved to the edge of the cliff and peered down at the rocky cove where his ship was moored. Rising from the crystal-clear water was the most beautiful woman Marina had ever seen. Her hair flowed like liquid silver around her shoulders, and her skin had the luminous quality of pearls. From the waist down, her body curved into a magnificent tail covered in scales that shifted from deep blue to emerald green as she moved. A mermaid, Marina breathed, unable to believe her eyes. The creature looked up at them with eyes like liquid starlight and smiled, revealing teeth like small pearls. When she spoke, her voice carried the music Marina had been hearing all her life, but magnified and pure as crystal. Greetings, Lighthouse Keeper's daughter, the mermaid said. I am Pearl, guardian of the deep currents. I have been waiting long years to meet you. Marina found her voice with difficulty. Waiting for me? Why? Because the time has come for you to learn your true heritage, Pearl replied, her tail creating gentle ripples as she moved through the water. Your grandmother was more than a lighthouse keeper, child. She was a bridge walker, one who could move between the world of land and sea. The gift runs in your bloodline. Elias placed a reassuring hand on Marina's shoulder as she struggled to process this revelation. Bridgewalkers are rare, he explained gently. They serve as guardians of the boundary between worlds, ensuring that the balance is maintained. But I don't understand, Marina said, looking between Elias and Pearl. What does this mean for me? What am I supposed to do? Pearl's melodious laughter drifted up from the waves. First, you must learn to use your gift properly. The music you hear is just the beginning. With training, you will be able to communicate with all sea creatures, to calm storms with your voice, to guide lost souls safely home. And the lighthouse? Marina asked, her practical nature asserting itself. Will remain your responsibility, Pearl assured her. But it will become so much more than you ever imagined. Under your care, it will serve as a beacon not just for ships, but for all who are lost between worlds. Elias squeezed Marina's shoulder gently. I came here seeking the new bridge walker, he admitted. My ship and I have been bound to these waters by ancient magic, waiting for the one who could break the curse that keeps me from finding true peace. Marina turned to look at him, her heart racing at the implications of his words. What kind of curse? A sea witch's spell cast in revenge when I refused her advances? Elias said with a rueful smile. I've been sailing these waters for 50 years, Marina, though I've aged only 5. Only a bridgewalker's touch can free me. The weight of destiny settled around Marina like a cloak. She looked down at Pearl, who watched with ancient wisdom in her star-like eyes, then at Elias, whose face held a mixture of hope and resignation. In the distance, her lighthouse stood tall and proud against the morning sky, its white walls gleaming in the sunlight. How do I begin? Marina asked, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. Pearl's smile was radiant. Come to the water's edge tonight when the moon is full. I will teach you the first songs of power, the melodies that will awaken your true abilities. But remember, child, with great power comes great responsibility. You will be the guardian of secrets that most humans cannot comprehend. As the morning wore on, Marina found herself torn between excitement and trepidation. The revelation of her heritage explained so much: her connection to the ocean's music, her grandmother's mysterious reputation, even the way the lighthouse seemed to respond to her presence. Elias stayed close beside her as they returned to the lighthouse, his steady presence both comforting and thrilling. She was acutely aware of the curse that bound him, of the possibility that her newfound abilities might be the key to his freedom. But she was also aware of the growing attraction between them, the way her heart raced whenever he looked at her with those storm-gray eyes. Are you afraid? Elias asked as they climbed the path toward home. Marina considered the question seriously. A little, she admitted, but mostly I feel alive, like I've been sleeping my whole life and finally waking up. That's exactly how I felt when I first embraced my connection to the sea, Elias said softly. It's not an easy path, Marina, but it's a meaningful one, and you won't be walking it alone. As they reached the lighthouse door, Marina turned to face him fully. Promise me something, she said impulsively. Anything. Promise me that whatever happens tonight, whatever I learn about my abilities, you'll stay until we figure out how to break your curse. Elias's smile was gentle and full of promise. Marina, I've waited 50 years for this moment. I'm not going anywhere. That evening, as the full moon rose over the ocean like a silver coin, Marina prepared to discover the true extent of her magical heritage. The lighthouse beam swept across the water in its eternal pattern, but tonight it seemed to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat, as if the ancient structure itself was awakening to new possibilities. With Elias beside her and Pearl waiting in the moonlit waves below, Marina took her first steps toward a destiny she had never imagined, one that would bind her forever to the music of the deep and the mysterious captain who had sailed into her life on the wings of a storm.